So we've spoken to two gamers, guys that, as you heard, semi-pro gamers that really are fascinated by the FGC, integral in the FGC community. But as you'll know from the very first segment, and what Fabio was telling us, is that Illusion Gaming is not just about having gamers as part and parcel of the team. Joining me now is Francois Botha. He would prefer not to be known as Francois Botha. RustyPieLover is his preferred name, and we're going to unpack that. But firstly, Rusty, Francois, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
RustyPieLover.
Yeah.
I've got to find out where that all came from.
So it's actually interesting. It was around 2013, it was a nice hot summer's day, and my sister and I went to go do some shopping, and I was watching, I think it was Markiplier, doing prop hunt. And I was saying, I think I can do what they can do. But I needed a nickname to really stand out, because in content you kind of got to try and stand out. So everyone called me Rusty at that point because of the ginger hair and the ginger beard.
I would never have thought.
And at first I hated it, but I said, maybe I can turn this into something. And coincidentally, I was eating pepper steak pie. So I was like, Rusty the Pie Lover. But I was like, no. The is just a little bit too mellow. So I combined the whole thing. And ever since then, it's gone through a couple of changes. Had to make sure we put some capitals in specific places. I'm not going to say where, but I think we can leave that to the imagination for people. But since then, it's stayed the same for 8 years now.
So Rusty is there obviously for as we can clearly see, but Ginger Streamer is another nickname that you go by. Professional high-pitched screamer. What's that all about?
So I don't like horror games. I think a lot of people can verify, like Outlast, those kind of things. We don't like horror games, and I hate getting jump scared. So the professional high-pitched screamer comes from 8 years of every now and then having to do a horror game, and then something jumping in my face, and then letting out a very high-pitched scream. And it takes a long time to perfect that type of screaming. So Ginger Streamer with the ginger, professional high-pitched screamer, it is not something that is said lightly, it is actually a profession.
Okay.
To be able to scream at that type of pitch that's still entertaining and still can give other people jump scares while I'm afraid about what happens to me.
Something that you clearly work at still to this day.
Very much.
Let's talk about your journey. So unlike the two previous gentlemen we spoke to, Vincent Sequela, you don't play games per se. You are more a content creator, you're more a streamer, but obviously being part of the Illusion Gaming setup, it requires you to have a fundamental understanding of what they do, because it's about editing and putting it all together and getting it out there. How did that journey start with you? Obviously you were eating a pie at the time and said you could do that stuff, but what attracted you to this space, this industry?
It's actually from a very young age that I was into gaming. From 6 years old, my mother and father pulled out a little NES console at that time. They stuck a cartridge in and they said, okay, here you go. This is your first experience. And I actually learned how to speedrun Mario at that point, Super Mario Brothers. That was fun. And ever since then, I've only had a passion for gaming and watching YouTube. Back then, we grew up as a poor family, so we really couldn't afford things. We worked to the point where we built a computer, where I provided internet. And I said, you know what? I also want to create content. I also want to see what this journey is all about, what it takes to be a creator. And since then, I've honed skills such as Photoshop to create thumbnails, attractive thumbnails, learned how to edit from 2013 onwards and just refined my type of humor, my type of editing that I wanted to put forward to people. And being in gaming as long as I have, I know most of the games. I know these guys that I'm proud to be part of with Illusion. I've also played fighting games. I've also seen what it takes to do what they do. I've seen esports. I've seen it all. You don't get to say, you've been doing this 8 years and say you've seen it all without having seen it all. And it's an honor and a privilege for me to be able to say that even after 8 years of doing this, every new experience is a learning experience for me.
So in terms of that experience and what you've seen, having seen it all, difficult to understand because there's just so much out there. Content creation, it's very clear from what I've seen. It's very clear that from what you've seen that not everybody can just create content. There requires a little bit of thought, a little bit of strategy, a little bit of insight into what you're trying to achieve. But what are some of the fundamental lessons that you've learned as a content creator over these last years?
I think one of the most fundamental things of content that people misconstrue is it's a quick way of making money. And it's not. It isn't. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes passion behind it. Anybody can go in front of a screen, make a video or do a live stream. Anybody can do that. But do you have the passion to continue doing it? Or is it just something that you just say, okay, well, I gave it a shot. It's not what I want to do. There's a difference between being a streamer and a content creator versus an entertainer. Do you want to be the entertainer? Do you want to be a content creator? You have to define who you are as a content creator. You have to define what you want to do. And a lot of people fall out of content just because they don't find the expectation that they thought didn't match what they were putting out. And that's a huge part of content, that you have to be able to put out what you want to receive. And one of the fundamentals I would honestly say to any new content creator that wants to come in, because it is a very saturated field. It really is a very saturated field. You need to show people who you are as a person. And that doesn't have to be someone outspoken and bubbly and screaming the entire time. You can be one of the most chilled people on earth. And as long as people see the genuineness that you are putting forward, that is one of the biggest fundamentals, is to be yourself when you are doing content.
So it's about creating a connection.
Yes.
What are some of the key tips you can give to youngsters to help them create those connections?
It depends on what they want to do. If you're doing YouTube content, it's a lot of editing, but people still want to see some form of genuinity in your editing. Case in point, if you make highlight videos of fighting games, you want to show people, listen, this is what I do, but you're a little bit loudly outspoken. People want to see that. When you're doing live streaming, people want to still see that kind of energy. Interact with your fans. Interact with the people that come to your chat and say, hi, how are you? That kind of connection builds to a lot of future. Your social medias, when you reply to people or you put out something that can pull a genuine interaction from people, doing little Twitter polls or putting up an Instagram and say, what do you think about this? Always try and capture the attention of your audience. And that way you'll build that community, and slowly but surely your community builds and builds and builds.
So understanding what you've just said now, you've obviously had to build a relationship, a connection with your teammates, because you've got to understand what it is they're trying to achieve when it comes to first of all, gaming themselves, in terms of what their goals and aspirations are in that particular moment. And then you've got to create a connection, not just, I would assume, not just for them, but for Illusion, but also for yourself. Because it's now almost becomes like this vicious little triangle that you're having to juggle to make sure that everybody is satisfied. Is that a good summation of what your current role almost looks like at the moment?
It is, and the only way that you can really try and keep everyone happy is to find out what type of people they are and what it is that the organization is looking for from those people. And once you find that middle ground, it becomes a lot easier to understand what it is the organization wants from you and what it is that the team members want from you. Once you understand the core value that everyone shares, you can branch out from that.
Illusion, very, very young organization. I know Fabio's got some big dreams. You guys are all part and parcel of that. You guys have all probably given your input into it as well. If we look at where the gaming space and content creation in the gaming space is right now, what do you see as some of the big trends going forward, let's call it next 5-6 years?
Esports is definitely one of the bigger trends. We have a lot of young players in South Africa. I mean, the youngest one I know of is 9, and he is playing Apex on a skill level of some of the biggest esports players I've seen worldwide. So esports is definitely one of the biggest trends, and the organizations that I've come into contact to and being part of this one, the right mindset is there. I think it's more a matter of trying to build each other up and not allow pettiness to form part of the scene. And to be honest, I've seen so much of it. Even nowadays, there's a lot of pettiness and toxicity within organizations, not ours, obviously, but for future references and for future purposes for any type of esports organization, that is something that needs to be worked on. There's a lot of breaking down of each other in the community instead of building each other up. And that will be one of the pitfalls, especially for future content creation. There's a lot of toxicity within esports and even content creators themselves that needs to be rooted out and sorted. We need to be a community that builds each other up. We want to see the future of content and of esport level caliber players obviously be in a more positive space, where when we go out to overseas, because we are limited to South Africa at the moment, once we go overseas and we have that foundation of people building each other up, it's a matter of morale. People can go in saying, my country is behind me, my organization is behind me, this rival organization is behind me, they want to see me succeed. That's not where we are at the moment.
You raise a very interesting point there, because, I mean, the world at the moment is inundated with GBV and there's just so much polarization taking place around the world. And if we look at what's taking place in the discords, in the forums, in the platforms at the moment, and let's just use the FGC as an example, but it's not the only one. Degradation of players, sexism, racism, toxic masculinity. When it comes to content creating, you yourself, how conscious do you have to be of not playing into that narrative or adding so-called fuel to the fire? Or is it something that you actually really think about? Or is it just, I must just be myself and I don't care what they think. I'm not being sexist. I'm not being racist. My content doesn't do that. How heavy does that play as a burden on you in terms of creating that content?
This ties into, for future content creators and present. We put ourselves out there. You are in the public eye for most of your content life. And anything you say and do will obviously have an impact. If you are so arrogant as to believe that you are not capable of changing your views, if you are saying this is who I am and people must accept me, then you are not meant to be in content. And I'll say it blatantly. You as a person need to grow and learn that sometimes I'm at fault. I need to change who I am. I have to be a better person. And with discords and with a lot of younger upbringings, we do see some of the older ways of what was taught being put down on their children. And now what we're trying to do is we're trying to root it out. Now it becomes this whole big public spat, and some people say, yeah, you shouldn't do it in public, you should do it in private. It's all a matter of perception. But the main point is you cannot be so arrogant as to say, this is who I am, this is what it is, take it or leave it, because you're not going to go very far. You have to be able to grow as a person, understand that the person behind those words that are said is also another person. They are capable of change, they're capable of growth. It is in your own personal capacity to want to grow or not. And if you choose not to grow, then you're not going to grow in any scene. No one is going to want to do anything with you, and then you're basically stuck in the mud. And people know, because you've put yourself out in that space, they know this is not the type of person I want to work with. It falls the same with any organization as well. If we know your leadership is toxic, how can you run an organization under toxicity?
Yeah.
How can you run an organization under irony? You want to promote campaigns against gender-based violence or racism, but you're inherently racist yourself. You can't do that. You cannot do that. You can't be a player that does that either. You cannot be a content creator that does that either. You have to understand that the people who are fighting for this as well have gone through a lot themselves. They have. People who have fought against racism have been have been, how can I say, stereotyped against. Gender-based violence, there are people that have suffered from that. Now, you want to be so arrogant as to say, oh, this is how I am, this is my statement, take it or leave it. It's not going to work. That's a big thing that, especially locally, has to be worked on. It has to be worked on.
Wow, what an introduction to Illusion Gaming I've had today. Just heard so much strategy, insight coming from the few team members that we've had an opportunity to talk to. So for the viewers out there, reach out to them. They're everywhere. Illusion Gaming, find them online, follow some of the stuff that they're talking about. Put them to the test. Ask, engage with them. You've heard from these youngsters that are really, really looking to build this community, to build gaming, build the FGC, and most importantly, get the right content out there. Reach out, speak to them, and if you want to find out more, I'm sure so much more available that you can find out about the Illusion Gaming team online. Until next time, defend yourselves at all times. We're out.